All right, well now what we're going to do is just allow you guys to ask some questions of Gus, of Samuel. So there's quite a number. So maybe the best thing we can do is maybe just start down the front and just hand the microphone back as we go. Does that sound all right? So if we start down, this is one of the advantages of sitting down the front. So on this side, that's right, and here too, thank you. So let's start. Yeah.
Gus, do you think if you had this opportunity on earth as we do now, you would have followed it even with your soul condition then?
Good question. Good question. It depends probably at the point I was given the option, and if it had happened at a point where I was younger, maybe, before I got the fulfillment of some of my corruption, or at a time where I was feeling less in control, maybe it would have helped. I would have taken the opportunity. Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Once the career of sin has well and truly begun,
Yeah.
it's a lot more difficult to begin correcting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi Gus, thank you for sharing your story. My question is, when you started to connect, when you tried to connect to God the first time, when you got into the spirit world, you said that you were pretty disconnected from your feelings. So when you first tried to feel God, did you have to go through the frustration of not being able to, or you were at a point where you were so connected that you immediately felt the answer from God?
I suppose I wasn't trying to feel something from God. I didn't start praying with any, as I shared earlier, when I first entered the spirit world, I didn't think I was in any place created by God, or that God had any authority there. And then as my pain increased, as I lived in the spirit world for a time, I began to pray, but really it was a prayer for the end of suffering. I didn't have the mindset that I would feel something from God. And as I said, helpers came to help me in that time. And my first real feeling of God was when I was in a place of deep repentance about the killing, that one of the killings I had done, but the killing of a Mexican man that I had perpetrated. And I wasn't seeking something from God. In that I didn't want a feeling from God. I wanted to say, I'm so sorry. I felt so sorry. And that's when I first felt God's forgiveness of me, which was overwhelming. But I wasn't. A lot of you are still in a phase where you're very needy and demanding of God, that you want a feeling from God rather than to have your own feelings and to have a feeling of sorrow.
Of your own sin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So over this side. So we're going to go back line by line. So whoever's on the next row. So Courtney on this side and Theo on this. Yep.
The phase that you went through of like the anger and the rage, did you feel like that was helpful for you? And was there like a relation with the people who came and talked to you, or just curious about that part?
Yeah, I think it was necessary coming from the place that I was in, but it wasn't necessary to go as long as it did. As I said, when I passed, I was very disconnected from how angry I really was. And so having a period where it became very known to me through my own expression, through my own almost surrender to the sin I was in, the rage itself showed me that I was full of rage, and that helped me. But it was still a fight against reality. It was still a fight against the situation I was in. And it wasn't until I came to, having the rage kind of showed me how futile it was to change my reality or to change the situation I was in. And once I started to learn that through my experience, I was less angry. So it helped me in that sense.
And I've got to point out, Courtney, he was feeling it all day, every day, not just occasionally. It was all day, every day, and of course, in the spirit world, you don't go for sleepers often either. So it's all day and night, every day.
Yeah. And it was a surrendered state to rage as well. It was like a full body, full feeling experience.
And to be frank, rage isn't a surrendered state anyway. It's where you're fighting.
Yeah, I was fighting the reality. When I say surrendered in that sense, I mean there was no part of me that was observing the anger. I was in the anger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you so much for being here and for your time. We sincerely appreciate it, sir. What is the most ethical way we can respond to men that were in similar states that you were in when on earth? Angry or power-hungry men or spirits that are willing to perpetuate violence to attain power. What advice would you give to spirits or people that feel they need to acquire power for the purpose of defense, especially where there are so many embedded and invested into the defense or security of the United States to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and they gave their lives in service?
Yeah, good question.
I'm so glad you brought this up because the very first thing that I feel every person born in the United States needs to deal with is that there is a feeling that they feel under certain circumstances violence is justified. And until that belief changes within the individual, then their response to men who have the same ambitions as I had when I was on earth will not be sincere. They will not be pure. They will be, even in protest, still in support of that war, the culture of war, if we call it that, within the United States, and the culture of the feeling that extreme violence is rational. I use the word extreme on purpose. So the ethical response to a man such as I was, and such as there are many men on earth in that same condition, is to deal with your own belief in violence, your own desire for violence under certain circumstances, and your own belief that many people now feel like, I don't want to perpetuate the violence, but I would like the violence to be used to protect me. And so that's an even darker condition than someone who's willing to perpetuate the violence, because it's saying, I want a proxy for the violence. And this is where I find that a lot of people in the United States are not honest with themselves about how much they want a proxy for violence. And in my day, there were a lot of men were perpetuating violence. It's been a terrible thing for generations of soldiers to deal with the compensation for that, but there's very little awareness in current modern societies of how much there is the desire for violence, but that I don't physically do it, but I promote it in others. So that's the first point I would make about that. The other thing, you quoting the different oaths and constitutions and things that have become a part of the psyche in the United States. It's very important for people who live in the United States to come to see that their identity is a child of God and not a citizen of the United States. There is so many investments in having that second identity, that false, unreal identity, that cause a lot of arrogance and cause a lot of entitlement. So the second ethical way to respond to men with ambitions of power is to no longer buy into the premise that they have that as a citizen, as their citizen, that you are entitled to certain things. So these are personal, important personal changes that a sincere person will make that will cause their response to men who have violent ambitions to be far more reasoned, far more loving, and far more ethical, as you said. So that's really what I can say to you about that in the most pointed way, if I say it that way. You know, there's other ways that you can respond in terms of physical actions of protest or disagreement or having a voice, but none of them will be effective unless you alter your own soul condition, your own feeling of support for those things. And that, at the moment, there's a huge desire for ignorance within Western nations of how much they desire. It's what I spoke of before your break, that these values that have been instilled by generations are actually promoting people with these violent ambitions into positions of leadership. And so without feeling how your values align with that violence, and whether that's in terms of your desire for personal protection and safety and wanting another proxy for someone to provide that, if by violent means, and the sense of entitlement, unless those values are repented for, then it's very difficult for you to have an ethical response. But I love that question.
Thank you so much.
Very good question. Yep. And we're over this side now. Who was next in the... Yep. So, which row? Who's next? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Sam or Gus, I might have just answered my question, but there's something it's been in my heart, and as I progress, I reflect upon my childhood and how I had been oppressed by some of these societal structures. I'd say the military-industrial meat-medical complex, whatever you want to refer to. But
you have lots of fancy words for things these days, don't you?
But you know, one of my experiences was that I was.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go there with
Oh,
you.
okay, yeah. Then
it's either a question, or
the
now you're in an
is,
addiction, so
guess,
it's
you're
a
right.
question.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do you feel there's any ethical trajectory to engage the current societal constitution, government system at all?
Well, I think that was already answered, wasn't it?
It was, okay. So to
Yeah.
The ethical way to engage begins with creating a sense of true ethics internally.
Correct.
And then you will engage with everything in your environment, not just these huge structures, but with people generally.
Okay.
You'll be guided by a compass that is not currently existing inside of you, and it's that compass that you need. The tendency on earth in a state of sin is to seek a set of actions to take. But really, there is a multitude of situations and opportunities in every single person's environment. And when one has this internal compass, governed by the conscience, by God, by God's laws, then you know how to respond in every situation, rather than trying to seek a set of actions. That the seeking of the set of actions is in itself an avoidance of generating that ethical place internally, moral
and it's also
ethical.
open to corruption.
Yes.
It's open to the corruption from others.
Correct.
So when you're seeking, to get a set of rules from somebody else, at some point there's going to be somebody else who says, rightio, I'll provide you with the set of rules.
Correct.
And this is exactly how people in power who are corrupt remain in power, by them providing the rules you want to have, rather than having to go through your own experience of sorting something out internally first. So,
and your own sin corrupts the interpretation of everything.
The only reason I had brought it up was just because last year I remember Jesus mentioning some ideas for work and things we could do here in the United States. And one of the things you said last year was you could consider trying to change or rewrite the Constitution.
Yeah, but
So-
that would be a personal thing you do.
Through
not,
the development of the internal compass, the words
Oh, I
will
see.
flow.
Okay.
How would the Constitution look if it was going to be a loving Constitution? How would it look versus how it is now? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so seeking God's counsel in that process and dealing with one's personal, for myself and for most of you, the desired arrogance, the desired power, the desired ignorance. Unless we deal with those personal problems, we can't sincerely know how a thing will be loving.
Yep.
Thank you, Gus.
Good day. Michael.
Hi, Gus. I want to ask 3 questions. I'll just offer them. First, you mentioned working on your desired ignorance and desired arrogance. Could you speak on that and maybe developing a desire for an attitude that makes me want to do that and how you did it? That's one.
You want some inspiration, Michael, do you?
You mentioned sleep state, and it sounds like some people are open to that. So how can we learn more in our sleep state and put aside our defenses? It seems like a good way to bypass mine.
Your resistance in your awake state.
Yes.
Well, you're not going to like my answer, but yeah.
No, I want.
What's your third question?
Similar to we've asked, do you see we have an attitude towards immigrants, towards illegals, aliens, and it's...
Even those words, who feel the weight of those words.
And it's not and God doesn't see borders, and we're all equal. And do you see this flowing from your sin, like an extension of what you experienced and how it's multiplied?
Sure. Well, let's start with the third question and work backwards. Obviously, I was a man trying to draw lines on the land. When I came to Mary this morning, I said to her, well, I'm from this place here, but I don't even want to I'll just show you on the map, I don't even want to call it what I tried to create, because obviously that sin was inside of me, the desire for dominion, the desire for control. It was a lot about control. I felt that if we had more control over lines and borders and people, that there would be more power and safety and order. And all of these were sins that I perpetuated on earth. They didn't start with me, of course, but I certainly perpetuated them. And certainly they live on. They live on. And as you say, now there's a lot of weight of emotion against people who come from just the other side of a line that's been marked out. And of course, people gather on either side as well, trying to make themselves similar through their values and their beliefs to the people who reside in their region, and different from people on the other side of that line. And those differences are often perpetuated and desired out of fear and rage, that multi-generational rage about being either rejected or feeling entitled. All of these injuries that I've discussed in certain ways this morning about entitlement and power. A lot of these things have created in others a feeling of rejection, and when that is not dealt with, then there becomes rage and indignation and injustice, and it creates further divisions. When each side doesn't deal with their sin, then the people on the other side of the borders, wherever those borders are, not just these borders that we're talking about today, then perpetuate their own sins, and there becomes changes in what you now call culture, which a lot of cultural differences are based in the rage of wanting to fit, or being told you don't fit, or being told that you must be a certain way in order to fit. And all of these are sins and take each person away from the knowledge that they are equal and are a child of God, essentially. So that's a brief answer to your third question. It's also a very good question. Maybe I need to write a book. Maybe I need to find another medium and write a book about this stuff. Yeah. You mentioned about developing sincerity and coming from a place of desire desired ignorance, desired arrogance, and coming to a place of sincerity, and how one does that, or how I did that, and the role of the sleep state. Well, the sleep state, you're only going to learn as much in your sleep state as you really desire to learn in your awake state, or you're only going to recollect it anyway. And so dealing with the desire for ignorance and the desire for arrogance, in my personal experience and in the experience of people that I now counsel, it first starts with recognizing those desires, experiencing them, understanding that they're a part of you, seeing where they exist, and measuring that desire against the reality that you live in. And there's a lot of pain in that for a lot of people, what there was for me. But until one does that, there's no way to really drive the engine in the opposite direction towards sincerity. One of the basic principles of God's laws is that we must first experience where we are at the start in order to change direction. We can't change direction just in terms of spiritually without first understanding the state we're in, the city we're in, if you like, the soul condition we're in, and coming to feel the pain of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's the biggest advice I can give you is rather than trying to skip the pain that you're currently in as a result of these desires, feel the pain you're in and relate it to your beliefs and your desires. Mm-hmm. Make that connection, and then you start to have a motivation to change your desires to become more sincere.
Yeah, the question is driven by the desire to avoid your pain. And there are no magical solutions to that, as he explained through his experience. He had to come to the stage where he was wanting to embrace his own pain. It's sort of, each of you, in a way, are faced with two fundamental decisions, really. One decision is, do I embrace my pain, yes or no? That's one decision. Most of you have yet to make that decision. Do I embrace my pain, yes or no? Pain being caused by the sin. If you embrace your pain, you'll start to see your sins. This is what happened to Gus. The second question is only happening after the first. So the first question is, do I embrace my pain, yes or no? The second question is, once the first question is resolved and you emotionally want to embrace your pain, then the second question becomes valid. And the second question is, how fast do I want to do it? Do I want to do it slow or fast? Yeah. That's it. They are the two fundamental questions most people will face in their lives when it comes to dealing with their sin.
Yeah. And may I add another couple of questions?
Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
No, of course I don't want to disagree with you. They're the fundamental questions. But another important question that I've had to answer many times is, do I want a truth external to my own set of beliefs?
Yes. That's all part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Facing the pain is going to have to embrace the truth external to yourself. So the problem then you face is that you like the truth you think you're in. So when you like your own truth, you're not open to hearing God's. So when it comes to pain, the two decisions are what I just said. When it comes to truth, well, that's going to happen before you embrace the pain even. What is the truth about your pain? Are you going to have to feel it or not? Most of you still believe you don't have to. You don't have to, so therefore you don't want to, and therefore you won't embrace it. You won't make the decision yes or no about my pain, because you're going, it's not true, I don't have to deal with it. And unfortunately, in US society, your whole society, as Gus has already pointed out to you, is really based around the philosophy that comfort is the goal. You should not have to experience anything else other than comfort all your life. That means that you're not going to hear an uncomfortable truth. You're not going to work through an uncomfortable emotion, right, while those emotions and thoughts exist.
Yeah, it's so important.
Over here we are now, so yes.
Hi, Gus. I'm wondering more about how you spend your time in the spirit life. you explained how it was in the first sphere. Wondering more about how it was different in the second, and now what things you did there versus now how you're spending your time in the third sphere.
Sure. I would divide my time really between, well, there's probably three major areas. And again, I'm going to explain them as in terms of desires, and that the desires affect the physical interactions that I have and the physical experiences I have. So my first desire is to continue in my repentance process. And so that involves a lot of time at home. I have a nicer home now, much nicer, but I do spend a lot of time in quiet reflection, in prayer, and I'm given a lot of assistance in that process to see where I'm still out of harmony with God's love and God's laws. And so that's a very home-based activity. And in the second, from the top of the first sphere all the way to where I am now in the top of the third sphere, that's always been really like a home process, and my home has improved through that time. It's now quite beautiful. I have a lovely view over like a hillside down to that stream that I love, and nearby to a forest. But I am inside a lot doing that. The second main desire I have is to serve others, which I've talked about as well. And that activity takes me to the first sphere a lot. And so I spend a lot of time in the hells, speaking with people, trying to have those kind of conversations that I mentioned to you that people had with me about just encouraging reflection on one's life on earth, and also visiting the earth plane with people sometimes to show them the effects of their corrupt ambitions and how that's playing out on the earth. So I do spend a lot of time there. That's a part of my life. And the third major desire I have is to aspire for what could be better, what is to come, to find my other half. I'm learning about that now, and also how to have better relationships, how to love, how to have loving cities and communities. One day maybe I'll be given that responsibility. I don't have that now, but it is something that I like to visit places and see how things are run and governed and how people are interacting with each other, because I feel this desire in me to perfect myself in love in those ways. So it's really those three. Of course I have other desires, but they really fall within those three categories, and they very much affect the way that I spend my time. I would say that's the case for everyone here, that our global desires govern the lifestyle that we lead. So I travel a lot, sometimes within the third sphere, and a large majority of the time in the lower spheres, talking with people a lot, and then I have at least a third of my time at home in prayer and reflection and working on the things that sometimes my experiences with the people that I'm helping help me to see where sin still exists within myself, and I can return home and feel about those things and deal with those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And follow up on that, are you guiding anyone on earth? And how much time, doesn't sound like you spend most of your time in the spirit life. How much time do you actually spend helping people on earth?
I would say that I'm mainly helping people who've entered the spirit life now. So you could call me a guide, but I'm not assigned to one person. I usually have a group of 5 to 8 men that I'm assisting at any one time based on their desire. And I often visit the earth plane in that process, but I'm not guiding anyone currently on the earth at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, Mandy.
Hi, Gus. Just a question on when you were talking about feeling the pain and experiencing the sensations of pain of your sin when you were getting shown, but you weren't yet feeling sorrow.
Yes.
Can you say something about getting from that place to the place where you did feel sorrow for your sin?
Yeah. That involved a lot of the point I mentioned just earlier, seeking the truth about my beliefs. So I had to engage. So I was feeling in that process that I mentioned is really like compensation, which is that the law operates to give you the painful effect of how you've acted and what your beliefs and motivations and desires have created in terms of action, and the effect that that's had on other people. It wasn't until I was willing to really feel the wrongness of my beliefs, and that took a number of things. You know, there was external help to help me become aware that, you know, my beliefs had created these actions and that there was a problem in my beliefs. But it also took the development of sincerity, which unfortunately just took pain. You know, I was in a lot of pain, and over time, when you're in enough pain and you begin to think, well, maybe there's another reason for this pain than what I'm, you know, maybe there's something I could do that would end this pain. And that creates an opening where you begin to consider, wow, maybe it's something that is in me, maybe it's a belief, maybe it's something that I can change. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Gus. Really nice to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is
felt very touched,
new
very
experience
moved
for me.
by
Yeah.
what you shared. So I was sharing with some folks last night at dinner that I listen to AJ as I'm going to sleep, so he puts me to sleep every night. And then when in the middle of the night when I wake up and I'm having a hard time going to sleep, back on. And oftentimes maybe I'm up for a while, an hour or two, and so I have a chance to connect in with the truth and God's world as much as possible. And then I wake up and I'm in the world and doing my work, living my life. And there is a sense, you mentioned not to be focused on being a citizen of the country that we live in, but there is a feeling in me that I want to be a responsible person, so I want to know what's going on in the world. So seems to be inundated every day with, I wrote all this down, lies, misinformation, fake news, twisting of the truth, no relationship to the truth, facts don't matter anymore. Yeah. And so, you know, here we are.
Quite the contrast to your nighttime listening, huh?
Yeah, it's very discordant in my soul, and I'm sure I'm not alone here. And so I guess really my question, or what I wanted to share, is that I have a hard time, it's like some of my friends and family members who voted to put this group back into power this time, that has brought up a lot of anger in me and a lot of sadness, a lot of anger. And I've found that I have a hard time relating to those folks. And so I really putting out a call to just ask for your perspective on this, but also
sure.
how you could maybe help.
Yeah, sure.
To help me through this, what I'm dealing with. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, you know, you're in a state of judgment and blame. And you're in that very injury that I talked about earlier, about placing the responsibility outside of yourself for the pain that you're in. And when you go to sleep, you're listening to an external source, while it's a good one. You're not settling with the feelings that you have. You know, the rage that you have. You have rage. A lot of it is about wanting a feeling of unity, wanting a sense of comfort, without first dealing with the fact that you feel uncomfortable in yourself, you feel frightened in yourself, and you feel angry that someone should make you feel less afraid and more comfortable. And so you're seeking Jesus to give you that sense of comfort rather than lying with your discomfort and your fear. And then when you're seeking out the fake news and the lies, and I agree there's a great many of them, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that the current government is lighter, or is darker than the alternatives that are currently on earth. I see corruption in every form of government on the planet, and every party is corrupted by the same sins that I was corrupted by on the earth. The desire for power, the desire for control, the desire for arrogance, the desire for entitlement. All of these things have corrupted every political system on earth. And so when you are feeling upset and disturbed, rather than having those feelings, you are entering a state of blame, a state of desiring to control. Your anger about these things is a desire to control the external rather than facing your own sin. And as I mentioned to an earlier question, facing not your discord with the current state of affairs, but your agreement with the current state of affairs. When there is a facade that doesn't meet our own, such as your current governance, we often feel like, oh, that's nothing to do with me. But actually, there are many features in your current president that you share.
Can't be true.
Exactly. You need more praying, my brother, I'm afraid.
Okay,
And while
that's
you
what I asked for.
Yeah, while you keep trying to outrun it. I say that, I make a joke, but I mean it with deep compassion. You're trying to outrun your pain. And make no mistake, I'm not trying to diminish the sin of the governance that is currently underway. I'm only trying to draw your sense of personal responsibility to deal with your own pain about it, but also with your own agreement with it. Now, that's a harder thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And the sin of your government isn't far removed from your own, to be honest.
That's right.
So, this is where we often enter a state where we're going, I want to blame somebody else for what's happening now, rather than seeing actually there's these commonalities within your own self that have caused the current situation you're in to be there, and even your condemnation of the group of people who brought this particular government in. Why would they not feel the same condemnation of you bringing the opposite form of government in, which is also just as corrupt as the one you currently have?
I want to quote the Bible to you, which is, now we see through a glass darkly. Dealing with your personal sin will help you to have clarity about what is happening. You're not wrong to think that there is evil governing your country, and that fear and terrible prejudice and racial problems are rife. These things are true, but you see it through a glass darkly at this time. Deal with your own pain in a humble way. Ask God for God's truth about yourself primarily, and then you will see clearly the things external to yourself. That's a principle that applies to everybody.
Many of you are using my teachings to settle yourself down. In other words, just to gain comfort from your external environment. And this is not the purpose of the teachings I'm delivering to earth. The purpose of delivering these teachings is to expose your sin, not the sins of others. Right? You expose your sins, now you will be able to clearly see the sins of others.
And
at
now,
the moment,
yeah.
You're not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're an agent for change. Then you're an agent for a movement, a powerful, loving movement. But before that point, then we're hypocrites.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Don't think that one form of government is any better or worse than the other. They're all driven by the same underlying emotions currently on earth. And it's a lot to do with the ambition of specific people, but also the desire for others, like the populace themselves, to be able to get away from their fear, have somebody else act on their behalf in their rage, and many other things which Samuel Gus has already explained to you, right? So unless you deal with those particular things within yourself, your government cannot change. Yeah.
And may I say that many times the reason I raise this idea of through a glass darkly is that many times there are elements of our lives, our lifestyle, the governance the authority over us. Some things we see as good are actually deeply sinful, and some things we see as bad have kernels of truth. And this is why if you deal with your personal sin, you will become discerning. You will understand how to improve the systems in which you live. But you can't bypass that process. I understand, to some degree in my life on earth, I wanted to do that as well. I saw there needed to be change and I wanted to affect it. But I was so corrupted by my sin in that process. And it created a lot of pain for myself and others, generationally now. I'm respected for things that I'm ashamed of.
Years ago, Mary and I went to Philadelphia, and there was a group in Philadelphia here in the US. And it would have been, I don't know now, 10 to 15 years ago. Some of you might have even been there. And after we did a day's presentation, we went out to dinner with a group. There were about 40 or 50 of us. And I raised the issue of how each person at the group was personally culpable for the actions of their government. And every single person there argued against that. In fact, the argument got quite heated to the point where we had to get to the stage, Mary and I had to walk out of it, to be honest. And, you know, that shows you, in a way, the level of denial that the general population here in the US is in about their own contribution, sin-wise, to the status quo in the country. And this happens everywhere we go. This is not unique to you. It's every country you go to.
I see it everywhere.
Every country we go to, in the West and also in other countries, you get the same attitudes developing, but we're not participating. We're different. We're better. We're, you know, and if you think about it, it's a lot about, in some ways, feeling superior because you don't want to go to war, but you definitely want your country to. You definitely want, the emotion that's existing in the majority of you is that you want your country to, under certain circumstances and situations. And so these things have to be more reflected upon individually before anything can change globally.
And it is an individual process. That's my experience and the experience I see everywhere around me, that it's also pointless to say, oh, well, the government is there because I'm in sin and they're in sin, unless we understand our individual sins. And in the way I feel about it is offer those sins to God, offer them up to God through my repentance process. Then I don't really understand, firstly, myself and my sin, but I don't understand the world around me. So we don't share every sin alike, but the reality is within a nation there are very, very many sins that are in common.
And even on completely opposite sides of a political spectrum or any other opinion. You've got completely opposite sides of medical profession. You've got completely opposite sides with regard to things like women and abortion, and completely opposite sides in so many areas, all polar opposites, and yet oftentimes the exact similar sinful condition exists in both sides.
The belief in rage, the belief in control, the belief in that under certain circumstances love is not the standard to uphold. And
until you go through your own sin, you won't see that. You'll think your opinion is righteous and the other person's opinion is not righteous.
Hello, Gus. Thank you for sharing this afternoon. I'm going to change my question from prominent guys that you've had in your life to this one. How's the soulmate thing going?
It's a work in progress, my brother. I've had we haven't even talked about that area of my sin. I've had a lot of work to do, coming to terms with the level of arrogance that I've had over women and the disparaging attitude I had towards women's gentleness, emotion. I had almost no relationship with my mother on earth, and I felt that women were not, they weren't equal in any way, intellectually, morally, spiritually, in any regard, and I saw them really as servants. And so I've had a lot of issues to work through. My relationship with God has assisted me immensely in that process. And I now enjoy the company of women equal to men. I'm largely involved in assisting men because they share the common injuries that I had, but certainly I socialise and I spend time when I visit places and when I talk to others with women equal to men now. So it's going well. I think it's going well, and it's going very well. And I'm excited to meet my soulmate. I haven't met her yet, although I do have feelings from God sometimes that the time is near. And I'm also prepared that she's quite likely to be in a better condition than myself, although I'm not sure about that. In terms of guides, I haven't had anyone who you would necessarily recognise. They all came from... one of my guides was actually a Roman emperor, so...
Where are we over here? Yes, thank you.
Hi, Gus.
Hi.
When you had the experience of becoming repentant and it opened you to receiving God's love, how did that change your process and your pain? Did that open you to deeper levels of pain, or how did that change things for you, I guess, is the main question.
Yeah. Well, in many, many ways in that first experience. Obviously, to experience God's love is something unlike anything else, really, in experience. And so it was overwhelming in terms of to feel God's level of regard for me personally was quite transformative in a way to my future. I felt that I felt those feelings from God, and at that time I was in a state of deep sorrow about taking the life of another person, and I had worked on that, and I had seen that was such a grave sin, and there were so many repercussions to that person, but also to their family and to the society that I was in as well. And so I was in a deep level of sorrow, and to feel God's love and regard for me, concurrent with God's shared belief that what I had done was very wrong, is difficult to describe, but it gave me a sense that that I was forgiven, of course, but also a knowledge that love was real, that my worth was not based on my actions, but more on my sense of being created by God. And when I first had that experience, it was probably those feelings were fainter than they are now, because I've gone through that process so many times. But it certainly spurred me forward in the process. It certainly exposed more sin to myself, but it also was the kernel of the desire to really love others as God loves, and that has grown a lot. That feeling that I want to love others as God loved me in that moment, because it was such a powerful change in the way I viewed myself.
May I ask further on that? Did that inspire you to more quickly address your other issues that required repentance? Like, did it sort of speed things up for you in general?
I can answer the question, but also I would encourage you to examine why you're asking it.
Yeah.
There is still that sinful desire to avoid pain. That is really driving the question, to avoid shame, to avoid personal discomfort. So yes, it did speed up, it did inspire me towards more change, and more rapid change. But there have been times where I found my progress slowed when I was faced with, such as some of the issues with women, that I was I felt very righteous about them, and I found that I was less willing to repent for some of them than I had been in my initial stages of my progress, which was a lot about the domination and the removal of will from people through death and control. So seeing that my desire to dominate the will of women was just as sinful slowed me down for a while. I didn't want to see that. So yes, it did inspire me towards more change, but I would encourage you to examine. Many of the audience feel that God is going to take away the discomfort. Many of the audience is still not recognizing that God requires you to feel the discomfort of your sin and to know it well, to know the sin well, to know its repercussions well, and the feeling that one connection with God will take away that process is not accurate. For every sin I have repented for, I have had to go through the same process until I reached a state of true sorrow and true knowledge of the sin, and then God could take away the cause. And while that's a quicker process than my brothers who choose not to do it with God, and it's a far more educational and transformative process, it does still require the same things of me each time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Your country addiction to comfort is inside of each one of you. And as a result of that, you're going to find it's one of the very hardest things for you to give up. But you're going to have to give it up in order to make some progress. Yeah.
I would pray and pray and pray to see where that is in your life. It will help you very much. The desired comfort is a thing that blocks your clarity a lot of what your sin is.
Yeah.
And what God's nature is even. God's desire
Basically,
for
you just want to be relieved of your own internal torture rather than actually be sorry for your sins you've actually committed.
Yeah, exactly.
We're over this side. Now, Mary's starting to get tired now, and so I just need to check. Yeah, we've probably only got a few more minutes, I think, before Mary's done. So if we go over to this side, yes, we're up, Steve.
Gus, thank you for coming today. Very helpful.
It's a pleasure.
Do you have any connection with any of your descendants today on earth? And do you counsel them? And then what advice would you give to us to help us to be more open and receptive to spirit guides and counsel?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I have, one of my sons who's now in the spirit world, I had a lot to do to try to help him when he was on earth. I still have sorrow about it, about the legacy I left and the feelings he felt and the pressure he felt when he was on earth. And I did try to assist him, but of course I was coming from a place of sin still at that time. I do have, it's an interesting conundrum when one enters the spirit world in a state of sin, because you immediately often see, just in the initial awakenings to sin, or even just in just pure observation, you see the unhappiness of your immediate family. You see it clearer than you did on earth. And you often want to act to alleviate it, but you're still in such sin yourself that you've got no idea how to actually help. And often I did, and many other people make a mess in that place, because they still influence people on earth in their unloving desires. And yet, it is the nearest ancestor who has passed, say your father or your sister or someone, that you on earth are usually the most open to. So it's a good question that you ask of how do you open up to good spirit guidance? Because these are often people who, if they're from your family, they're at least a generation or two in the spirit, longer in the spirit world. You may not have even met them, and sometimes they're people who are drawn to you only because they have had a similar set of sins that you have, and they desperately and sort of purely want to desire to help people on earth with getting through that sin, and yet you don't know them at all, and so you often think you don't think of them, and so the communication is not as clear as it could be. So let's talk about some things that I have observed to be helpful. One is the more a person has disconnected from the sense of family being the only source of love on earth, so the person on earth, the more willing the more open and willing they are to accepting that people outside of their family unit can love, and especially if they feel that God is a source of love. This immediately makes the person far more open to loving guidance, spirit guidance. The other thing is the more a person has a belief in the spirit life, and the fact that some people call it angels, some people, yourselves are very privileged to understand how the spirit world is constructed, and you understand some spirits are in a better condition of love. These kinds of things also, just immediately that education helps you to be more open to spirit guidance. And the third thing that I observe is that when people are more self-reflective in their life on earth, they often become aware that somebody who is kind has given them a prompting here or there. And you can do this. You can do this in your life, even from today. Look back on your life in times of stress or hardship or even joy, or even at a point of a pivotal decision that worked out well. Sit and reflect, and often people have an awareness that someone helped them with that, or something outside of themselves was guiding them. And often they call it their intuition, but it's usually a loving spirit guide. And so making that point of connection, even if it's in the past, and then longing for loving guidance, will attract loving guidance to you. You must do the personal work, though, on what your definition of love is, because this goes wrong all the time on earth, because people think that love is comfort, love is the alleviation of fear, love is being told you don't need to worry, you're good as you are.
You're perfect already.
It's everyone else's fault. All those things create poor spirit attractions. So this is where your sincerity is key, and this is the laws of rapport that actually govern all of existence. And coming to understand those laws of rapport, I know that Jesus and Miriam have given you the books here today, and there is some education in those books, I'm aware, about the laws of rapport, but you will find that most spirits in a condition above the second sphere or in the second sphere understand rapport, and they understand that your desires and your aspirations, as well as your current condition, create a rapport with the spirit entities around you. So even you can be in a condition of great sin, but have an aspiration to love, and you will attract a higher spirit than someone who is in a lesser condition of sin, but has no aspiration to love. They are more likely to attract spirits who will reinforce their condition to them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's time probably to have some lunch now. So sorry about those down the back where we didn't get to you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. It is a great gift to me to come and correct some of the errors.
Yeah.
So you have given me a gift. Thank you.
Yeah. And perhaps you'd like to thank Mary too. Yeah, so thanks for coming, Gus. It's been great to have that and to get your experience. We know that there's many thousands of others who have similar experiences as well, obviously.
Yes, of course.
And it's wonderful for you to be able to share yours.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thanks. G'day. Well, what we'll do now is just pause for lunch. And what's the time? It's about
20 past.
Yeah, so if we can come back about 10 to or thereabouts, 10 or 5 to 2. And
can you hear the ringing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of ringing with us, so
Yeah.
I'll have to sort that out. So we'll come back about 10 or 5 to 2. Let's make it 5 to 2. and we'll get started on some other things I'd like to discuss with you then.
And we'll try and vent some heat out of this room.
We'll try and
eh?
vent some of the heat out of this room as well. Yep. Let's go.